MBFrends presents an introduction to the Idealist Temperament. Part 1, an overview.
Idealists are intuitive feelers, NFS, who roughly make up 15% of the population. The Idealist temperament group is comprised of the following four temperament types. ENFJ, the teacher, INFJ, the counselor, ENFP, the champion, and INFP, the healer. Unlike artisans who seek stimulation, guardians who seek security, and rationals who seek knowledge, idealists seek identity. Idealists often dedicate their lives to this kind of self-realization, seeking to become realized, trying to get in touch with the person they were meant to be, and to have an identity which is truly theirs. How can I become the person I really am? Idealists wander, sometimes intellectually, sometimes spiritually, sometimes physically, looking to actualize all their inborn possibilities, and so become completely themselves. To the idealists, however, self has a capital S and is a special part of the person, a kind of personal essence or core of being, the vital seed of their nature, not unlike the soul or spirit of religious thought. NFS are passionate about finding this true self, about becoming who they are, or self-actualized. Idealists regard this search for identity as the most important enterprise in their lives, and with their gift for language they can be powerful advocates for it being a necessary pilgrimage for all people. Very often the other types, the guardians, rationals, and artisans, are troubled by the thought that they ought to be pursuing this goal, even if the search for self does not beckon them. The reluctance of roughly 80% of humanity to join the search for self-actualization is a great source of mystification to the idealists. But even more mystifying is the paradox coiled at the very center of this search, namely, that the search for self is fundamentally incompatible with the achievement of finding the self. For many idealists, the search for self is a quest which becomes very much an end in itself, and which can come to dominate their lives. In their enthusiasm for self-discovery, then, idealists can become trapped in paradox. They are themselves only if they're searching for themselves, and they would cease being themselves if they ever found themselves.
Idealists are abstract in their communication and tend to talk of what can only be seen with the mind's eye: love and hate, heaven and hell, comedy and tragedy, heart and soul, tales and legends, eras and epics, beliefs, fantasies, possibilities, symbols, selves, and yes, temperament, character, and personality. Idealists are more prone to wishful thinking or value judgment than the other types, and they make no bones about it. Indeed, they are glad to let their heart rule their head, telling all of us that this is the wise thing to do, for the heart, they believe, is the soul of humanity. Isabel Myers regarded idealists as being creative, enthusiastic, humane, imaginative, insightful, religious, subjective, and sympathetic. Idealists value being enthusiastic, trust their intuition, yearn for romance, seek identity, prize recognition, and aspire to be a sage. Idealists are highly emotional people, in the sense that their emotions are both easily aroused and quickly discharged. Fortunately, NFs tend to be positive types, and so their emotional intensity is usually expressed as unbounded enthusiasm, particularly when discussing ideas, or sharing personal insights. Their display of enthusiasm can be both delightful and contagious, often making them inspiring figures in their groups. However, when frustrated in their idealism, or when treated unjustly, NFs can become quickly irritated and they will respond furiously, the fire of their enthusiasm suddenly flaring out in anger. Idealists trust their intuitive powers, their feelings or first impressions about people, not needing to wait for a rationale, or even wanting one, for what they believe. While logic is acceptable for some conclusions, so is the guardian's authority, by the way, but to be really sure, idealists wait for their intuition to show them the way. To be sure, such inductive inferences, requiring what is called the intuitive leap, at the very least, idealists are the best suited of all the types to read between the lines, or to have a sixth sense about people, and they do indeed follow their hunches, heed their feelings, and insist they just know what people are really up to, or what they really mean. Idealists are highly sensitive to the nuances of communication that qualify messages, the body language, facial expressions, and voice inflections which, quite often, the other character types are not even aware of. And NFs are so sensitive to the subtleties of spoken language, finding implications and insinuations in the slightest remark, that they seem to have invested language with supernatural powers, what might be called word magic. Perhaps idealists trust their intuition about people so unreservedly because of their extraordinary ability to identify with others, to put themselves in the other's place. As the saying goes, NFs will crawl into another's skin, or they will walk a mile in someone else's shoes. The most important thing to remember about idealists is this: one and all, they are incurable romantics. Each type has an abiding hunger, some restless longing that needs to be satisfied each and every day. Artisans hunger for social impact, guardians for belonging, rationals for achievement. Idealists are not without these other yearnings, but they have much less hold on them than their hunger for romance. Romance, in the sense of idealized love, is not something which NFs can take or leave. It is vital to their growth and happiness, a nourishment they cannot live without, just as its opposite, the uninspiring, commonplace relationship, is flat and stale and lifeless. In all areas of life, idealists are concerned not so much with practical realities as with meaningful possibilities, with romantic ideals. But particularly in their love relationships, NFs have a keen appetite for romance. If any type can be said to be in love with love, it is the NF. And yet, while they fall in love easily, idealists have little interest in shallow or insignificant relationships. On the contrary, they want their relationships to be deep and meaningful, full of beauty, poetry, and sensitivity. If their love life lacks this romance, idealists have been known to romanticize their relationships, infusing them with a glow of perfection that can rarely be sustained in the harsher light of reality. All too often the NF falls into this pattern of romantic projection, accompanied by a considerable investment of effort and emotion, ending in a painful disillusionment. The way to the idealist's heart is to show them that we know their inner person, the being behind the social role that must be played, behind the public mask that must be worn. In other words, to make them feel appreciated we must encounter them, meet them at their view of the world, as they put it. This is not an easy thing to do. And so it happens only rarely, and they, more than others, go through life feeling misunderstood, unknown, mistaken for the roles they are forced to play by social reality. You see, idealists believe that each of us is a unique and special person. So it makes sense that they would feel prized by having their person known by another. If only on rare occasions. Idealists idealize themselves, and, as mentioned above, continue searching for their true self or real self. They are devoted to bringing the true self, more and more into being, so that recognition by someone they care about is very important to them and very gratifying when it comes.
Most idealists see themselves, and wish to be seen by others, as empathic, benevolent, and authentic. With other attributes, such as artistic gracefulness and audacity, important to idealists' temperamental opposite the artisans, such attributes mean almost nothing to the idealists. Idealist self-esteem is greatest when they see themselves and are seen by others as empathic in bonding with people in their circle. Idealists feel a kind of natural sympathy for mankind, but they base their self-esteem on the empathy they feel with those people closest to them. To the NFs, even introverted NFs, life is nothing without sensitive personal ties, without shared experiences and intimate attachments, without rapport so close that consciousness itself seems to be shared. Idealists can become absorbed in drawing close to a single person, or they can become deeply involved with a group, their family, friends, the class they're teaching, a church congregation, and so on. But they are simply not interested, not for very long at least, in things other than empathic human relationships. Idealists base their self-respect on their ability to maintain an attitude of benevolence or goodwill toward other people, toward all of existence. For that matter, NFs are without question filled with good intentions and kind feelings. They have a fierce aversion to animosity of any sort, and they will suppress their own feelings of enmity and hostility as best they can. Perhaps this is because idealists have a powerful and ever-present conscience which hurts them deeply whenever they harbor feelings of malice, cruelty, revenge, or other mean-spirited intentions. Idealist self-confidence rests on their authenticity, their genuineness as a person, or put another way, the self-image they present to the world allows for no facade, no mask, no pretense. To be authentic is to have integrity, inner unity, to ring true, and, driven by a Gandhi-like desire for absolute truth, idealists insist on an ever higher standard of authenticity for themselves. On the other hand, if NFs somehow undercut their authenticity by being phony or false or insincere, they can be taken over by fear and self-doubt. In extreme cases, this loss of self-confidence can become a truly debilitating fear of the losing of self entirely. The problem for idealists is that this ardent wish to be genuine at all times and everywhere actually separates them from the authenticity they demand of themselves, and forces them, to a certain extent, into the very role-playing they want to avoid. NFs report over and over that they are subject to an inner voice which urges them to be real, be authentic. Always in the NF is that voice reminding them about being whole, unified, and true. But with this other voice in their head, idealists are inevitably caught in a dual role. Instead of the wholehearted, authentic person they want to be, they are at once director and actor. They are on stage, and, at the same time, they are watching themselves being on stage, and prompting themselves with lines. The irony of this wanting to be authentically themselves is that it often leaves idealists feeling divided and false, standing to one side and telling themselves to be themselves.
Idealists are altruistic about the present, credulous about the future, mystical about the past. Their natural place is on the pathways to understanding and they focus on tomorrow. The artisan perspective is practical, the guardian dutiful, the rational pragmatic, also different from the altruistic perspective of the idealist. Altruism is the belief that it's bad to be self-serving and good to be other-serving, or put another way, that our greatest happiness comes in selflessly giving to others, even when this involves self-sacrifice. NFs often dedicate their lives to helping others. Idealists see potential good in everyone, and they will gladly give of themselves to cultivate that potential, to help others grow and develop. This is why teaching and the ministry attract NFs, but also why missionary work can call to them, as does community volunteer work in the Peace Corps. To put others first is the best way for NFs to rid themselves of selfishness or egocentricity, which they see as the great stumbling block to self-actualization. Thus, NFs believe that as they let go of selfishness they get a clearer and clearer picture of who they really are, a glimpse of their true nature, unfettered by worldly fears and desires. Idealists are credulous. They believe in things easily and without reserve, exactly the opposite of their skeptical cousins the rationals. NFs are really quite innocent in their credulism. After pledging themselves to some individual or group, NFs are the most loyal of all the types, and will often use their enthusiasm to win followers, and to advance the cause. NFs may even exhibit an unusually passionate devotion to a cause, or to a cult, though more to the persons involved than to the principles espoused. However, while idealists can get caught up in a movement, they do not stay involved for very long if it fails to have deep lasting significance, with some hope of bettering the conditions of people in the world. The idealist is future-oriented and focused on what might be, rather than what is. To the NF, whatever is never quite sufficient. Indeed, it is unendurable to think that the here and now, the SP place and time, is all there is in life. Lastly, NFs, like SJs, regard the Artisans and Rationals utilitarian style, get the job done any which way, as counterproductive if not unethical and offensive. Conventional uses of tools should not be lightly set aside for the sake of increased utility without due regard for people's feelings about working together in harmony. For their part, idealists dream of perfect interpersonal relationships, mutually supportive interactions lifted high above the fray of competition and contention. Fighting in any form is inordinately painful to NFs and they will do whatever is necessary to avoid it or prevent it. Sustaining amicable relationships through conciliation, pacification, facilitation is much more their style. In any enterprise, the NFS first consideration is always to foster caring human relationships. This seems to them necessary, if they are to accomplish their ends. Their ideal is to help the people in their circle get along with each other, even care about each other, and thus work with each other for the good of all. In the next video of the Idealist series, we will explore the idealists and relationships. As always, please remember that learning about an individual's temperament is only a starting point, not ending point, to learning about that unique individual.
The source content of this video is Please Understand Me Too by David Gersey. For more information, please go to mbfrends.com.